There are 4 principal kinds of yoga. Jnana Yoga, the path of union with God through knowledge. Raja Yoga, the path of union with God through concentration and meditation. Bhakti Yoga, the path of union with God through love and devotion. Karma Yoga, the path of union with God through selfless work. Different types of people are suited to different types of yoga. But that doesn't mean they must practice only one kind of yoga. Most people combine 2 or more forms of yoga. Hindus say that it doesn't matter which one you choose. Krishna said in the Bhagavad Gita, "Whatever path men travel is my path. No matter where they walk, it leads to me." All yogas require basic morality, including truth-telling, continence, cleanliness, harmlessness toward life. First, let's take up Jnana Yoga, the yoga of knowledge, which of course begins with self-knowledge. It is also called a path of discrimination between the real and the unreal. Jnana Yoga is best suited to the contemplative or monastic person. Jnana Yogi seeks knowledge not through study, but through direct experience of God. Jnana Yoga entails union with God through the dissolution of ignorance. Shankara, the greatest exponent of Jnana Yoga, wrote, "It is through the touch of ignorance that you, who are the Supreme Self, find yourself under the bondage of the non-self, whence alone proceeds the round of births and deaths. The fire of knowledge, kindled by discrimination between the self and non-self, consumes all ignorance with its effects." We come to the second form of yoga. Raja Yoga is the yoga of meditation and the control of the mind. It is considered to be the supreme form of yoga. It encompasses all other forms of yoga. Patanjali was a sage who lived sometime between the 4th century BC and the 4th century AD. He wrote down a set of pithy instructions that have come to be called Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. They did not originate with him. They had been transmitted orally for many centuries before he wrote them down. These aphorisms are the foremost authority on Raja Yoga. Patanjali defined yoga as the control of thought waves, the control of thought waves in the mind. This is a difficult thing to do. The Hindus compare the average mind to that of a drunk, crazed monkey. Professor Houston Smith elaborates. The motions of the average mind, say the Hindus, are about as orderly as those of a crazed monkey cavorting about its cage. Nay more, like the prancings of a drunk, crazed monkey. Even so, we have not conveyed its restlessness. The mind is like a drunken, crazed monkey, but has St. Vitus dance. To do justice to our theme, however, we must go a final step. The mind is like a drunken, crazed monkey with St. Vitus dance who has just been stung by a wasp. How long can the average mind think about one thing only, without slipping first into thinking about that thing and taking off from there on a senseless chain of irrelevancies? About 3.5 seconds, psychologists tell us. Smith compares the mind to a ping-pong ball, which after following the direction of its owner on the initial bounce, takes off on a jittery flight of staccato bounces that are completely out of hand. Houston Smith asks, what if the mind could be turned from a ping-pong ball into a lump of dough, which when thrown sticks to a wall until deliberately removed? Would not its strength be compounded? The Hindus say yes. How do we go about controlling the mind? First, we have to learn to sit still and to concentrate. Hatha Yoga helps us to do this. Hatha Yoga consists of the physical practices that allow the control of breath and bodily functions. The Goraksha Samhita calls Hatha Yoga the ladder for those who wish to reach the higher regions of Raja Yoga. However, some teachers today believe that Hatha Yoga is a hindrance, not a help, to God realization. Swami Vivekananda was one. As Christopher Isherwood explains, Hatha Yoga has been condemned by spiritual teachers because it tends in practice to concentrate the mind upon the body itself. In the West, it is to be found in a completely degenerated form as a cult of physical beauty and prolonged youth. It is merely a question of a state of mind and attitude. I am certain that in using Hatha Yoga, you understand that you are strengthening and making resilient the body temple of God, the temple of God in which God can inhabit, and that you are not solely interested in physical beauty and prolonged youth. If these be side effects, well and good. But your practice of Hatha Yoga is truly a meditation on God as the universal body, which you are also. One who practices yoga can develop special powers called siddhis, S-I-D-D-H-I-S, siddhis. These include many of the miraculous feats we have heard of in the West. Knowledge of the past and future, knowledge of past lives, great strength, walking on the water, flying, mastery of the elements, the ability to surround oneself with a blaze of light, and the ability to die at will. Patanjali told us that these powers can come not only to yogis, but also to those whose minds are spontaneously enlightened through purity. Western saints like Padre Pio have been reported to possess some of these siddhis. But the siddhis are not the goal. Patanjali called them obstacles to samadhi, obstacles to samadhi. He said when the yogi gives up even these powers, the seed of evil is destroyed and liberation follows. Most people are not suited to the life of meditation and contemplation required by Jnana Yoga and Raja Yoga. They feel pulled to be active in the world, to pursue a career, raise a family, develop a skill, or to help others. There's nothing wrong with that. Karma Yoga is the path to salvation for those who are suited to action. As far as I'm concerned, that's my kind of yoga. I love to be working all the time, but I put together with it the Bakti Yoga of devotion so that all my work is dedicated and devoted to God and His children. Karma Yoga is the path to salvation. It is derived from the verb kri, meaning to act. An action of any kind is karma. Every action is followed by a reaction. It is so easy to make karma, everybody. I want to tell you that. It is so easy to make karma any day of your life. And the worst way most of us make karma is through our mouths. What we say that we shouldn't have said. That has to be a mighty guardian action. The next one, that is the karma making, is the feelings. Unkind, angry feelings that we project out. This is more subtle, but it is just as evil. Feelings are almost uncontrollable at times. Then there are thoughts. Finally, there are actions. Actions usually come last because when you take an action, at least most of the time, you think about it. You talk about it, you discuss it, you make plans, you decide to do something or not do something. But the rest of them come without thinking. So just remember that. Every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of man, that can bring him blessing or woe. If we work for personal gain and ego gratification, we are attaching ourselves to this world and to the fruits of our actions. If we work for the good of others or to the glory of God, we are liberating ourselves from past karmas. Now, if we're doing it right, and what we do is good for people, and it's good for God, it's going to be good for us too. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explained the path of Karma Yoga. Works of sacrifice, gift and self-harmony, should indeed be performed, for these are works of purification. But even these works, Arjuna, should be done in the freedom of a pure offering, and without expectation of a reward. You always receive your reward, whether you sow good or evil. It returns to you multiplied many times. Then Krishna said, "This is my final word. It is not right to leave undone the holy work which ought to be done. Such a surrender of action would be a delusion of darkness. He who abandons his duty because he has fear or pain, his surrender is impure, and in truth he has no reward. But he who does holy work, Arjuna, because it ought to be done, just for the simple reason that you see a job, it's got to be done, you look around, there's nobody else that's going to do it, so you do it. That's just simple and uncomplicated. And you surrender selfishness and the thought of reward or praise. His work is pure and is peace. This man sees and has no doubts. He surrenders, he is pure and has peace. Work, pleasant or painful, is for him a joy. For there is no man on earth who can fully renounce living work. But he who renounces the reward of his work is in truth a man of renunciation. When work is done for a reward, the work brings pleasure or pain or both in its time. But when a man does work in eternity, then eternity is his reward. There is a dangerous situation where people leave off the service of God and the work of God for meditation, contemplation, and such spiritual activities. These have not learned that the work of the heart, head, and hand is a chalice for true meditation, contemplation, and contact with God. So let us remember these words of Lord Krishna. It is not right to leave undone the holy work which ought to be done. Somehow when you are a Chela on the path, you always know what God wants you to get done. He never fails to make known to you in your heart and mind. And so you really cannot fool yourself into thinking that you didn't really know that such and such ought to be done. Such a surrender of action would be a delusion of darkness. The path of Karma Yoga shows us how to be in the world, but not of the world. It shows us how we can stop digging ourselves deeper into the mire of the human ego and instead work toward becoming a pure crystal through which the Atman can shine unobstructed. Karma yogis must follow basic moral rules. Be conscious of their thoughts. Never think evil thoughts. Control their desires and passions. And never harm anyone, mentally or physically. Mentally or physically. To never harm anyone mentally, you need to be psychologically whole. You can harm someone by a seemingly innocuous remark which is said in a sarcastic tone. And you have hurt someone and hurt them to the very core of their soul and their inner child. One of the points of training that was so stressed by Almoria and Mark in their training of me was to never allow the voice to be used in such a tone as to put a burden on someone or to, with subtle innuendo, convey something that is negative and yet somehow escape, or thinking that one will escape the negative karma because of the cleverness of the human mind, which allows us to say all kinds of not kind things to people and appearing as though we were quite innocent from it. Voice tones are picked up by ourselves as children in the presence of our parents. As our parents speak to us, so we learn to speak. And if our parents aren't perfect, and many parents are not perfect, and we shouldn't expect them to be, then we will find that we are imitating those patterns. And so we discover them, our guru points them out to us, we eliminate them, and we learn how to use our voice wherein it is always a comforting sound. It always has the vibration of God, and we are careful not to speak when we cannot speak properly. When people make unkind remarks, others may or may not be sensitive, but something said in the wrong tone can actually cause pain in your chakras and in your organs. I'm sure you have all felt that. But what I have seen is that people who are very well-meaning, who don't even think about the fact that their voice is actually like a corkscrew inserted into your abdomen. They don't even realize it. It's kind of a twist at an attempt to control. People don't realize it, but it does go on all the time. So let's work on it. So as I was saying, until you are mentally sound and mentally whole, you may be the instrument of bringing harm to someone. So the Blessed Mother of Jesus told us in a dictation that you can only go so far on the path and go no farther until you have come to grips with your psychology. This involves the reading of books, and it also involves getting into therapy if you need to. So you can work on your psychology with a therapist as well as on your own. This is very important, and I've seen it myself. People cannot move forward on the path if they do not come to grips with their psychology. The karma yogi must never do work out of selfishness or feeling that he is making a sacrifice or a great effort. Krishna said that such work is impure. We must use the work to become detached from the world, Krishna said. He who dwells in his inner self and is the same in pleasure and pain, to whom gold and stones or earth are one, and what is pleasing or displeasing leaves him in peace. He who is beyond both praise and blame, and whose mind is steady and quiet. He who is the same in honor or disgrace, and has the same love for enemies or friends, who surrenders all selfish undertakings. This man has gone beyond the powers of human nature. And he who with never-failing love adores me and works for me, he passes beyond the powers of human nature and can become one with Brahman, the One. For I am the abode of Brahman, the never-failing fountain of everlasting life. The law of righteousness is my law, and my joy is infinite joy. Sri Anandamayi Ma, who lived 1896 to 1982, showed how even a housewife in the midst of her chores could be united with God. She had no formal religious training and yet achieved enlightenment before she was 30. She performed as a karma yogi for part of the day, scrupulously keeping house for her husband, cooking delicious meals and shouldering heavy household jobs. At the end of her day, her husband allowed her to practice nama japa, the recitation of God's names. She would sink into deep meditation for hours. After she attained enlightenment, she would regularly enter samadhi for long periods of time. As Bhatika Mukherjee writes, although her body was still, the radiance on her face remained undiminished. It was observed that she was neither unconscious nor in deep sleep. On arising out of these states, Sri Anandamayi Ma would in the most natural way smile at the people around her and then gradually take up again her interrupted household duties. It did not seem that she passed from one state to another, but rather that both were somehow the same for her. Anandamayi Ma became a saint known throughout India simply as Mataji. How many people are familiar with Anandamayi Ma? She certainly was a great light to India and a great light to my soul as I would look at her picture. Bhakti Yoga is the yoga of divine love. It is considered to be the easiest of all yogas because it does not tell us to give up our passions, only to turn them toward God. As Swami Nikalanda explains it, the devotee is asked to feel passionate desire to commune with God, to feel angry with himself for not making spiritual progress, to to feel greedy for more spiritual experiences. Bhakti Yoga does not say, give up. It only says, love. Love the highest, and anything that is lower will naturally drop away. This is absolutely true. The love of the devotee for God must not seek anything in return, must not be based on fear, must know no rival. Bhakti yogis practice devotion to God through constant repetition of His name, devotional music, and dance. They often worship Him in His incarnations. For example, Hindus believe that Vishnu has incarnated as a God-man or avatar 9 times. Worship of his incarnations as Krishna and Rama is very popular in India. Bhakti Yoga allows us to divert our desire for any human relationship into a relationship with God. And even when we have a human relationship, we are loving God through that person. We can choose the form that best suits our psychology and needs. We can worship God as father, mother, master, child, friend, or lover. The 16th century Indian poet, Saint Tulsidas, became a saint by diverting his love for his wife into love for God. He was passionately attached to his wife. Once, when she went to visit her parents without asking permission, he followed her. When she saw him, she was angry and ashamed. She said to him, "My body is but a framework of skin and bone. If you had half as much love for Rama as you do for this perishable body, all your sorrows would be over and you would attain enlightenment." After that, he renounced his wife and devoted his life to Rama. He didn't get the point, did he? Each bhakti yogi chooses a specific deity or incarnation of God. He enthrones this deity in his heart and directs to it all of his devotion. This is the first stage of bhakti yoga. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna described the path of the bhakti yogi. He who offers to me with devotion only a leaf or a flower or a fruit, or even a little water, this I accept from that yearning soul, because with a pure heart it was offered with love. Whatever you do or eat or give or offer in adoration, let it be an offering to me, and whatever you suffer, suffer it for me. Thus thou shalt be free from the bonds of karma, which yield fruits that are evil and good, and with thy soul, one in renunciation, thou shalt be free and come to me. The second stage of bhakti, the supreme stage, is when the distinction between the lover and the beloved disappears. As Swami Vedananda puts it, the lover, the beloved, and love all merge into one ocean of divinity. Sri Chaitanya, believed by some to be an incarnation of Krishna, taught bhakti yoga through intense devotion to Krishna. He was born in Bengal in 1485. He taught that the most exalted form of love for God was like the love of a woman for a man, where the attachment had superseded any desire for sex. Chaitanya identified himself with Radha, Krishna's consort. He taught his disciples to chant Krishna's names anywhere and at any time. He believed that the ultimate goal was to love Krishna as the beloved bridegroom. There is debate as to whether he believed in a mystic union beyond that. Sri Chaitanya wrote a prayer that describes the path of the bhakta. Chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean, and that mighty forest fire, worldly lust, raging furiously within, be quenched. O name of Lord Krishna, stream down in moonlight on the lotus heart, open its cup to knowledge of thyself. O self, drown deep in the waves of his bliss, chanting his name continually, tasting his nectar at every step, bathing in his name, that bath for weary souls. Nearby was a beautiful Rajput princess who lived in northern India during the reign of Akbar. She was a devotee of Krishna who defied convention to worship him. She frequented the public temple where she would sing and dance before Krishna's image and often go into samadhi. Her poetry sums up the essence of the Bakti path. Deep within my heart is my longing soon, oh soon to meet the Lord. Restless is my mind and turbulent. The arrow of separation has pierced my heart. I stand, I wait, that he may pass this way. In spite of my eyelids flickering, I have not ceased from my night-long watching. Day and night I utter his name. I have no pains, and all my joys are gone. The black cobra bites into my heart. Its deadly poison courses through my veins. Oh, grant me my wish swiftly, Lord. Come early then to meet me. For worn away and in deep distress, Mira is stricken with love for her Lord. Mira was ultimately granted her wish of mystical union with her beloved Krishna. According to one story, it happened while she was dancing before his statue in the temple. She saw the statue of Krishna open and herself being merged with it. After the union, she sang a new song. At last, O Lord of Mira, thou hast shown me thy dwelling place. Long absent from her home, Mira at last has found her way back to thy kingdom. Who then is Krishna? Krishna is a historical figure believed to have been the 8th incarnation of Vishnu. In Hindu tradition, as you know, avatars are incarnations of God. They appear in times of darkness as world saviors. Building of the foundations of past ages, they come to establish the religion of the age in which they are born and to reveal a new dimension of God's consciousness. Krishna is Sanskrit for black or dark blue, symbolizing the infinite space of the universe. Traditionally, he is depicted as having blue skin. Some scholars have placed him about 650 BC. The Hindus believe he was born in 3102 BC. Sanskrit scholar David Frawley believes that astronomical references in Hindu texts, as well as recent archaeological findings, reveal that Krishna lived at least as early as 1400 BC, if not 3102 BC.
You're watching Elizabeth Clare Prophet, world-renowned author and founder of Summit University. Summit University is located at the beautiful Royal Teton Ranch in Park County, Montana, just north of Yellowstone National Park. If you'd like more information, call 800-323-5228. That's 800-323-5228.
In the Chandogya Upanishad, Krishna appears as a wise teacher. Krishna's next appearance is in the Bhagavad Gita, or Song of God, India's best-loved scripture. It is part of the epic, the Mahabharata, which tells the story of a great war between two dynastic families. The Bhagavad Gita is written in the form of a dialogue between the warrior Arjuna and Krishna, who is serving as his charioteer. Krishna is driving the chariot. The Bhagavata Purana, a later text, relates detailed episodes from Krishna's life, including his early days as a mischievous child and amorous youth. Most scholars believe that these stories are an embellishment of the historical Krishna. Following is a brief outline of Krishna's life drawn mostly from the Puranas. Krishna was born in the kingdom of Mathura, which is south of Delhi. At his birth, there was a prophecy that he would destroy his uncle, the wicked king, Kamsa. Kamsa attempted to kill Krishna by ordering a slaughter of male babies. but his parents sent him away in secret to live among the cowherds. Krishna was brought up by Nanda, the leader of the cowherds, and his wife, Yasoda. As a boy, Krishna was fond of mischievous pranks, such as stealing butter. He also performed miracles and destroyed demons. As a youth, Krishna became known as a lover. He would play his flute to lure the gopis, the wives and daughters of the cowherds, to the forest to dance with him. These stories of Krishna as lover are seen as symbolic of the interplay between God and the soul. Just as the gopis pined after Krishna, so the soul pines after God. Krishna's consort is Radha, the most beautiful of the gopis. When Krishna was grown, he and his brother returned to their kingdom and killed Kamsa. Krishna then left his kingdom and went to the western coast of India and set up his kingdom at Dwaraka. He participated in the great Mahabharata war by lending his army to one side and serving as charioteer on the other. Krishna returned to his kingdom. Soon after, a brawl broke out among chieftains, and his son was killed. He took to the forest, where he wandered in mourning. He died when a huntsman mistook him for a deer and shot him in the heel, which was his only vulnerable spot. Krishna is the most popular incarnation of Vishnu. To some, he is the supreme deity. This belief, I believe, stems from Krishna's teachings in the Bhagavad Gita. In chapter 10, Krishna tells Arjuna that he is beginningless, unborn, the Lord of all the worlds. Krishna says, I am the one source of all. The evolution of all comes from me. With one single fraction of my being, I pervade and support the universe. In chapter 11, Arjuna asks Krishna to show him his true form. Krishna gives Arjuna divine sight so he can see the whole universe as all one in me. And Arjuna saw in that form countless visions of wonder, eyes from innumerable faces, numerous celestial ornaments, numberless heavenly weapons. If the light of 1,000 suns suddenly arose in the sky, that splendor might be compared to the radiance of the Supreme Spirit. And Arjuna saw in that radiance the whole universe in its variety, standing in a vast unity in the body of the God of gods. Many people have interpreted this passage to mean that Krishna was revealing himself as the supreme deity, creator, preserver, and destroyer of the universe. What I believe he was doing was demonstrating his manifestation of God, his manifestation of the cosmic Christ, as every son and daughter of God, at some point in time and space and beyond, can and should do. As the avatar of his age, Krishna can affirm that he is the creator of the universe. He is revealing to Arjuna what he has become, and therefore what Arjuna can become. Krishna was one with Brahman. He was the full incarnation of the Godhead. But just as Jesus did not claim exclusive sonship, so Krishna did not claim, I believe, exclusive godhood. There is a vast difference between saying I am God and saying I am the one and only true manifestation of God. No true avatar will deny the soul potential of every son and daughter of God to realize the fullness of God in manifestation. However many incarnations and eons the accomplishment of the goal may take. According to the teachings of the Ascended Masters, the threefold flame that burns in our heart is our potential to become one with God, the I am that I am. So the divine spark, so the Atman. If we can all say we are Brahman because the Atman is in us, then we can all say we are Krishna because Krishna is God in manifestation, and he is the God in manifestation, the same God that is in us. I believe that devotees of Jesus or Krishna or any other personality of God should not get stuck on that particular personality, but should strive to become one with the inner God of the avatar. We are meant to go through the heart of the one we worship and come to that original point of light that is in the beginning with God. As I see it, the only reason we have different religions today is because people have taken a single individualization of God and said, this is God. If you don't worship this person, then you're going to hell. This particular person is God. And so what we have is a flesh and blood consciousness of God. We lose sight of the universal Christ that Jesus came to proclaim and came to teach us how to realize. We lose sight of the universal God that Krishna was. We lose sight of it and forget that that same God is in all. Today we give our devotions to the Lord Krishna as one who has realized the fullness of the Godhead dwelling in him bodily. Even while we worship the one God who lives in him, we follow in his footsteps. For it is only because he and other God manifest sons have so attained that we can also attain. Therefore, when we give the Maha Mantra, let us know what a tremendous gift the very presence of Krishna is to us in this universe. That we can walk and talk with him as we walk and talk with our mighty I Am Presence. We can become his devotees. We can have a tremendous heart tie. But we don't have to proclaim a religion that says, Krishna is the supreme God over all other gods and there is no other God. This is straying from the inner spiritual intent to the outer flesh and blood consciousness, in my opinion. Salvation then is not automatic. We don't attain enlightenment simply by following the scriptures from A to Z. In the end, the Hindus teach that salvation can be achieved only through grace. Vitika Mukherjee writes, all the great pathfinders agree on one point, namely, man's seeking ends with a state of yearning. The finding is an act of grace, the grace of the divine lover bestowed upon the lover. We can yearn for God, but we can never attain him unless it is by his grace giving to us that contact. The Katha Upanishad says, this Atman cannot be attained by the study of the Vedas, or by intelligence, or by much hearing of sacred books. It is attained by him alone whom the Lord chooses. What did Jesus say to his disciples? You have not chosen me, I have chosen you. In the final analysis, God has to choose us and choose to bend down and pick us up as little orphans on the side of the road and take us to his heart. To such a devotee, Atman reveals its own form. Bhakti Yoga is a way of endearing oneself to God. As we form an attachment to God, God forms an attachment to us. And when he has tried and tested our souls and put us through the refiner's fire, he then, in his good time, extends to us his grace. Some people get angry at God because they do all the perfunctory things, all the ritualistic things in an orthodox religion, and God does not come to them. They truly become angry. They become angry for a lifetime because God has taken a loved one in an untimely death. I have seen people remain angry at God Almighty for an entire lifetime and more. And in succeeding lifetimes, this anger against God is suppressed. It is so deep that they have no recollection or memory, and yet they carry this profound anger in the unconscious. So we have to understand that when we wait on the Lord and love him and fulfill his requirements, he does ultimately extend us his grace. But he doesn't have to. And this reminds me of the story that I've told before. But one evening in Pasadena, as I was going to my home from our campus, I asked the persons taking me, can we stop by and get some spaghetti? So we stopped by at a spaghetti restaurant. We went in and we sat at a table, and right next to us was another table. And these were 4 Protestant preachers, all talking about God, all talking about what God does and doesn't do. And the one that was nearest me made a statement that I will never forget. He recited all the things that he was supposed to do according to his religion. And he said, now if I do this, this, and this, then God has to take me into heaven. This is this concept of guaranteed salvation. Can you imagine? God doesn't have to do anything. And for the most part, he doesn't have to obey the rules of man-made religions. The repetition of the names of God and of sacred mantras containing the names of God is seen throughout India as a means of reunion with God. Why? Because the name of God is God. Because the name God gives you is a chalice, a formula that carries his vibration. So God and his name are one. He gives you his name, you recite the name, then he gives you all of himself. Mantra yoga. Mantra yoga is an adjunct to the 4 primary forms of yoga. Hindus view the spoken word differently than we do in the West. The ancient Hindu grammarians taught, as Harold G. Coward explains, that knowledge of and correct use of words and their repetition as mantras brings about both spiritual merit, which leads to heaven, and complete spiritual realization known as moksha. The mantras in the Vedas are believed to have special power because they were revealed directly by God to the ancient rishis. A rishi, as you know, is a prophet or a sage. So Coward writes, the rishi is thought of as having been emptied of himself and filled with the divine. Therefore, the words that he spoke were not his own words, but the divine word reflected through his purified consciousness. David M. Knipe writes, Vedic mantras were and are believed to have the power to transform those who place faith in them. Since their power is cosmic, they can in fact transform all the phenomena of the world. In a phrase familiar in every language of India, it is said that profound changes occur by means of the mantra. Profound changes occur by means of the mantra. A mantra, explains the teacher called Satyavan, is not simply a prayer, not merely a phonetic sound. It is a syllable or word, or a series of syllables or words, vested with a spiritual power to evoke Shakti. Shakti is divine energy, to manifest within the jiva, the soul. Proper grammar and correct pronunciation are essential in giving mantras. The ancient Hindu grammarians even went so far as to say that you cannot attain spiritual merit without knowing the correct forms of the words. The grammarians believe that even the ignorant who do not understand the mantra can benefit from giving them. But the benefit to the one who understands the mantra is far greater. What then are the benefits? Mantras properly given, which includes all of our decrees, can consume our sins and desires, remove ego bonds or karmic tendencies, and lead to liberation and union with God. The Hindu practice of repeating mantras is based on the belief that repetition of a word or phrase automatically invokes the object of the mantra. The goal of mantra is for the one giving the mantra to become one with the mantra. When a person utters a mantra properly, he attains fusion with the object of that mantra, of course, which is always God. It's always an attribute of God. An attribute of God is simply a ray of light that goes back to God. If he is reciting mantras to Shiva, he becomes one with Shiva. We repeat mantras because union with God is a gradual process. It occurs step by step. Each time we repeat a mantra, we are gradually drawing ourselves into union with God. As we repeat the mantra, it is affecting change in our heart and mind. Westerners often do not understand the value of repetition. They think it is mindless. They even say it brainwashes the giver of the mantra and causes him to lose his willpower. This is the favorite phrase of the deprogrammers. But the real value of repetition, as Christopher Isherwood and Swami Prabhupada write, is that this frequent service of the lips imperceptibly becomes a genuine appeal of the heart, sinks down into the inward life, becomes a delight, becomes, as it were, natural to the soul, bringing it light and nourishment and leading it on to union with God. Ramanuja, a great teacher of Bakti, said that meditation should flow like an unbroken stream of oil poured from one vessel into another. When this kind of remembering has been attained in relation to God, all bondages break. Now here is the greatest definition of the word worship that I have ever heard. Worship is constant remembering. Remembering God. Isn't that beautiful? Worship is constant remembering. The repetition of mantras helps us to attain the state of remembrance of the divine. What it also does is assist us in balancing the karma we have made with the throat chakra by the misuse of the science of the spoken word. That is why it is good to have a mantra on the lips. St. Paul said, pray without ceasing. St. John Chrysostom said that no one should excuse himself from constant prayer simply because he is too busy. He said, everywhere, wherever you may find yourself, you can set up an altar to God in your mind by means of prayer. I took him at his word and produced this portable altar. The portable altar has grown since its beginning. It started out with Saint Germain and Jesus, and it is wound up with beloved El Morya and Kuthumi. I made this for people who are on the move, people who go camping and are outdoors, want to carry this in their backpack or anywhere, fold it up when it's not good to have it out. I got this idea from reading the Old Testament. The great prophets and patriarchs would journey, and wherever they camped, they would set up an altar to the Lord. And I thought it was a wondrous thing. Archangel Gabriel and Archangel Michael would be with them, and anywhere they were, they set up an altar, they offered their prayers to God. And so it is fitting to pray at your trade, says John, on a journey, standing at the counter, or sitting at your handcraft. St. John said that one who developed this habit would ultimately be able to engage in uninterrupted prayerful invocation of the name of Jesus Christ. Furthermore, this spoken prayer would become prayer of the mind and ultimately prayer of the heart, which he said opens up the kingdom of God, the consciousness of God within you. After giving a mantra for a period of time, the devotee's ignorance will be purged, and he may have a mystical experience when in a flash he has a direct perception of the truth of the mantra. The next step is moksha, reunion with God. One famous Hindu grammarian writes, after having reached the inner light, he with his knots cut becomes united with the supreme light. This is a Shiva mantra from the Rig Veda as given by Mark Prophet. We're going to listen to it first and then join him.
Om Triyambaka Yejamahe Sugandhim Pushtivaranam Urvarukamiva Bandhanant Mrityor Mokshya Mamritat. We'll all try that together. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivarnam Urvarokamiva Bandhanam Mrityor Mokshya Mamrita. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivarnam Urvarokamiva Bandhanam Mrityor Mokshya Mamrita. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivarnam Urvarokamiva Bandhanam Mrityor Mokshya Mamrita. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivarnam Urvarokamiva Bandhanam Mrityor Mokshya Mamrita. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivarnam Urvarokamiva Bandhanam Mrityor Mokshya Mamrita. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivarnam Urvarokamiva Bandhanam Mrityor Mokshya Mamrita.
I'd like to give you the translation of that. We worship the three-eyed one. This is another name for Lord Shiva, who is fragrant and who nourishes all beings. May he liberate us from death and attachment, that we may enter immortal life, even as the cucumber is severed from its bondage to the vine. This is called a moksha mantra, one which brings liberation from the round of karma and rebirth. It is also believed to cure diseases and prevent accidents when chanted with sincerity, faith, and devotion. Swami Shivananda calls it a mantra to conquer death. In order to use mantras successfully, you must have a guru to instruct in their proper use. Our gurus, the Ascended Masters, have given us dynamic decrees, which we repeat many times a day, according to the science of the spoken word, which science was revealed to the ancient rishis. These decrees were not written by Mark or myself. They were dictated to us directly by the God-realized beings, known as the Ascended Masters. They are powerful worded formulas similar to the Vedic mantras. Because these decrees are in English, they are in most cases more effective for Westerners than Sanskrit mantras. The Ascended Masters have also released to us techniques of invocation that have not been known since Atlantis. We explain the use of decrees in the book The Science of the Spoken Word. The most important thing about the decrees we have today is that they are the specific dispensation for the conclusion of the age of Pisces and the age of Aquarius. Those dispensations did not come to their full time when the ancient Vedas and the Upanishads were written. So we need to understand that these decrees are the foundations and the pyramid that we can use to build our individual pyramid. It is very important that we realize the tremendous gift of our decrees and the power that we gain by using them. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
For more information on the mystical paths of the world's religions, call toll-free 1-800-245-5445. The preceding program was presented by Summit University, Box 5000, Livingston, Montana, 59047, 5000. For your free copy of Elizabeth Clare Prophet's best-selling book, The Human Aura, Call this toll-free number, 1-800-245-5445. This is a limited-time offer, so call now for your free book. That's 1-800-245-5445.
Oh.